Hello! Welcome back, or welcome if you've never been on the channel before. I'm Jimmy, and today I'm gonna look at and this video is gonna be all about making a Viking tunic. If you're in a reenactment group or you've done any research or any reading on this, you probably already know that there isn't just one kind of look that is Viking. There are lots of Viking looks, so that's why this isn't how to make the Viking tunic, this is how to make a Viking tunic. So the tunic that I'm going to make is a new under tunic. If you've seen any of my other videos where I'm wearing my Viking tunic, you might know that my current linen under tunic is disgusting. Disgusting. It's disgusting. It's time for a new one. I've been wearing this one for about 10 years now, to every Viking event that I've been to, and I've been to a lot of Viking events. So, time for a refreshing change. Full disclosure, this isn't going to be a proper sew-along video like you get on some of the other CosTube channels, partly because every single seam on this tunic is just a long, straight, boring seam, and watching me sew long, straight, boring seams for 45 minutes is going to be long, and boring, and straight. Anyway, second full disclosure is I forgot to start filming for this video until after I had already patterned and cut out all the pieces for my tunic. So here's a fun little segment.
Right, first of all, you're going to need the main body of the tunic. So to get that, you measure from your shoulder down to your shin, double it, and that gives you the full drapey length of your beautiful tunic. Like so. It's literally just a big triangle. Not a triangle, rectangle, that shape. So, halfway along it, and a couple of inches down is where you put your neck hole, so you know which is the front and which is the back. Now obviously the width of this ideally should be your chest plus a couple of inches. Next you're going to need your sleeves. These are dead simple. Measure the circumference of your arms, and then measure from your shoulder down to about your thumb knuckle. Shape it down towards the forearm to give you a bit of a better fit. If you need some extra room, under the arm you fold a little square piece. That's your underarm gusset. Dead simple, mine's 4 inches square. Now to flare out the bottom of the tunic, to give you that nice tutu shape that you see in lots of early med tunics, you make these two triangular side gores. Job done. And there's the square. And that's it. Those are literally all of the bits of your tunic. In fact, when it's laid out, it'll look a lot like that. That is how your tunic's going to look when it's finished, okay? So you sew the side gores up one side, you sew the side gores up the other side, you sew the sleeves together, you sew the sleeves onto the main body, and you put the underarm gussets in. Yeah, it's as simple as that. This is your tunic. This is how your tunic will look. It's basically the simplest kind of early medieval tunic you can make. So, the measurements that you need. You basically need your shoulder down to your shin, double that to get the main body length. You need your shoulder to your thumb for the sleeve length. You obviously need the diameter of your arm, or the circumference of your arm, you need your head size, and you need your wrist diameter so you can fit into the sleeve. Okay, over to you, future Jimmy.
Okay, so now that you've had a look at all of the pieces that you need for this incredibly complex piece of clothing, the next step is to decide on your fit. Like I said, there's lots of different ways you can fit your tunic. It depends on who you are, what your status is, exactly what century you're on. If you're like me, you want your tunics and your clothes in general to fit you for a good couple of centuries, if not several decades, so that they're nice and versatile and you can wear them to lots of events, regardless of the date line. And the easiest way of doing that is to make it super simple. Fairly baggy, fitted at the wrist but not terribly tight, with a fairly tight neckline. Showing your chest and neck is not a good look for an early medieval man. So nice and tight at the neck, fairly fitted at the wrist and forearm, and then fairly baggy at the bottom with a sort of close-ish fitting. Kind of like this kind of a fit actually for the top. Kind of like a slightly baggy but not too baggy. It depends on who you are in terms of what your status is. So if you're a warrior or a farmer, you're going to need lots of space in the upper arms for you to do the chicken dance, or operate machinery, or, you know, swing a sword, swing a spear, whatever it may be. If you're a king and you just have courtly duties that day, maybe you'll have to dance, but apart from that, you can probably get away with much tighter sleeves for a more fashionable, tight-fitted look. If you need lots of movement around the legs, again, you can make slightly puffier skirts for your tunic. So the basic bits that you need for the tunic are really simple. You saw how to put them together. It's not the most complicated garment in the world. It's not the simplest tunic in the world. The simplest tunic in the world is just woven and belted at the sides, and it's done. But, it's a good sort of beginner's reenactment garment.
So remember all those long, boring, straight seams I mentioned? Here's some footage of me rapidly sewing through them. Now, I haven't actually mentioned the specific measurements that I used, but if you want to know them, I've put them in the description below, just because I didn't want them cluttering up the actual video. This is more about the process than about the actual geometry of the maths that I used. This is me inserting the underarm gore into the sleeve. Some of the things that I've found really useful, some of the lessons I've learned over the years of making several of these is, don't be afraid to make this bigger than you need it. You can always trim, but you can't add more fabric in without having to piece. And piecing is period, but piecing is a pain in the bum. So if you're making your sleeves, like I was, and you discover that your sleeves are too baggy in the forearm, like I did, it's fine because you can just rip some of those stitches out, like I did, and make them slightly tighter. You just make your forearms a little tighter, a little better fitted, and they should be absolutely fine. You'll see the shaping that I had to do on the arms in just a few minutes' time. Another lesson is always use your thimble, because as I was doing this bit of sewing, I managed to poke through my middle finger with the back end of my needle because I'd done so much sewing over the last few days in my dressing gown. So yeah, wear a thimble because stiff linen thread is pretty tough stuff. The process of actually fitting this thing is super simple. Once you have started, you can adjust the fit to your liking really easily. So this next little bit is about the neck hole. Making the neck hole starts with making a slit a couple of inches forward of the halfway line. That way you know that that's the front side. Get out of the way, James, thank you. Now, to increase the size of it without necessarily increasing the width of it, you can make a slit down the center, then test. Once it gets to about this stage, where you can almost get your head through it but not quite, that's when you start making the slit down the front, like so. This is at exactly the right size for me to just about get my head through, but I wanted a slightly more scooped neck. Now I can actually adjust that neck and make it slightly rounder just by folding down where those pins are. There we go, and bloop. Perfect, it fits, it's nice and tight to the neck, it's not straining on the seams at the sides, but it doesn't show off my chest, which was very unfashionable in the early medieval period. That's ideal, and it gives me bed hair, yay. Almost everything is sewn with a nice tight back stitch, with the exception of the bottom hem that I'm doing here. The bottom hem is just rolled and whipped because it's not under any real stress. It doesn't need to be that tough a seam. But everything else is potentially being worn under armour or several layers, so I wanted them to be nice tight back stitches and then felled. And then at this stage, this is effectively the finished tunic. It just needs to be sewn up. So this is kind of what it's going to look like when you've got all the bits done. It's already a piece of clothing. It's ready, basically. All that's required is even more sewing of long, straight seams and long, straight hems. Backstitch, generally about 12 to 15 stitches an inch is my usual standard for this, but I was using quite bulky thread, so yeah, that face. And here's the finished article. So there are the two side gores, you can see them there, folded in half in this shot obviously. There are the sleeves, nice and tight down to the wrist, and I've added a couple of neckties because I like neckties. The rounded collar is exactly what I wanted. Oh, Christmas. Here's a little close-up of the neckline and what I did to it. So I rounded it out slightly, and then I sewed these two linen neckties just into two little tabs that I inserted on the inside, and the tabs are there partly to reinforce that seam and partly so that the neckties don't actually rub against my skin, because that's icky and uncomfortable and nobody wants that. These are a little interpretation of a couple of pictures that we've got that show these kinds of ties being used. The sleeve was actually too baggy when I initially made it, so you can see that I've shaped it. I actually had to unpick the front half of the sleeve there, the forearm, and then I sort of trimmed it down a little bit to give it that slightly tighter shape. Underneath there is the folded underarm gusset that's just a square, folded in half and sewn in. This is the bit I always get wrong and end up sewing things inside out and the wrong way around. Sleeves are evil. Everybody knows sleeves are evil, but these ones have come out pretty nicely. They could be half an inch longer, but whatever. It's fine. Nobody's perfect. And there you go. The finished article. Future Jimmy, over to you.
And here it is. This is now a wearable early medieval tunic. It's fine. It's okay. I've not finished all of the seams yet because finishing seams is my thing that I procrastinate on because I am a terrible, terrible reenactor. I've done the sleeves. They look okay-ish. They could be a little neater, but you know what? I'm fairly happy with how they've turned out. Could I have done the underarm gussets a little smaller? Probably, but it's just a general under tunic. It's going to get worn for all kinds of activities, and I'd rather have them slightly bigger than slightly too small. If they were slightly too small, I know I'd regret it instantly because I have torn the underarms out of tunics before now, and having to repair them is a pain in the bum, especially if you're already busy, which I usually am. So, my new pride and joy is wearable and ready, which is great. Any other lessons that I've learned from doing a few of these? I've made a few of these now. I'd say always start with the neck hole nice and small, and don't be tempted to rush making the neck any bigger, because if you make it wider than the width of your head, then it will start to sag and you'll start getting like a weird plunging neckline situation, and you don't want that. And it's much easier to just take it really slow, and then as soon as you're like almost able to get your head through, start making the front slit if you're making one. Don't make a front slit there. Don't incise your own forehead. Start making the front slit if you want one. If you don't want one, then fine, but just bear in mind that as soon as it starts being like snug to your head, that's probably where you need to think about snipping a little bit around the curves so that you can start rolling the hem without it getting too big, because once it gets too big, it's out of control, and the off-the-shoulder look is not sexy for a Viking. So there is a giant bumblebee that keeps banging into our back window, and we've put plants up on the windowsill to try and stop it from doing that, but it's still, stop it. Can you hear that? Stop it. Eat the delicious plants. Anyway, so what medieval garments do you enjoy making the most? What do you find challenging about medieval clothing? What medieval clothing do you think looks best? I'd love to know. I'd love to know any of your opinions on this tunic in particular. If this was helpful, please do let me know in the comments. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, it would be wonderful if you subscribed to the channel, actually. I'm trying to grow the channel at the minute. Please do subscribe, and feel free to like this video, share it with your friends, any reenactors that you know who need some little hints on making a tunic. I'd love it if this could be helpful for them as well. So thank you so much for watching. It's been lovely having you, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. Oh. Boys gross. Oh.